things.
Did it
with grind
flicker?
stuff.
Did it flicker black?
I heard the knock.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Colin.
Why don't you want to do the intro? And
Oh, no. That's what you do.
All right.
Oh, no.
Jake, you ready? We'll
I
start.
was born ready. Yes.
All right, I know this. Jake likes being put on the spot. So.
That's weird, but yes.
I do too. All right, joining us now, we have Jake Daberkow, VP of Sales for Bulu. He's one of our own, I like to call him the Dabbin' Cow, which is lame, but I think it's way cool.
Have you had that one before?
No, and I actually that was the second time in my life I've ever dabbed before. I'm not.
Nice. Yeah, me too. Me too. No. Yeah. I like the kids that do the spastic dabbing. So Jake has been at Bulu for a long career of 3 months, I believe.
4?
Very, very long. Seems like a lifetime though.
Which is crazy because it feels like you've been a part of the team forever.
Fit right in.
Yeah. Whoever recruited you did a hell of a job. And Jake has a incredible background that I think a lot of our listeners will find interesting. And, the thing that I would love to start with, Jake, one, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We were talking earlier today, so I forgot. Yeah. Good to see you again. And one of the things that I would love to get is a little bit of your background, your history. But I think more specifically, like people would be really interested to hear like what it's like setting up global offices. And then also you're a CEO and entrepreneur of your own company, which Bulu is like cool with. And you've learned what it's like to start on your own. So if you could talk about those two things before Bulu, I think a lot of folks would find that interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's also good to see you again today. So myself, I spent the last 8 years pre-COVID overseas. I spent about 4.5 years up in England, and then it was just over 2.5 years down in South Africa. And a big part of what I was doing was to, like you said, spread the business model and to just build out exactly what was going on domestically in the U.S. in different countries where there was no representation. You know, the goal was to have a global business model, and you can't do that if you don't have the whole globe contributing. So
Right.
Yep, go ahead.
Was that easy to like take the U.S. model and just plug it in South Africa?
No, definitely not. And it was very interesting to first do it in England and then Europe, which if you've been in England and Europe in general, I mean, from England to France, it's definitely not the same, and to Germany to Spain, it's all different. So that was a bit of a warm up for how different Africa was when I went there. A big part of it was learning the culture. I got very good at being patient and really listening to people in those time periods to learn, how do we actually communicate clearly with each other? We're not necessarily the same in our backgrounds. So it was a very exciting opportunity for me to go in there and have a successful business model and go in there and have to adjust it to make it work there. It was a lot of, I'll call it fun now. At the time, I don't know that it was so fun. I was sleeping on the floor at offices a lot and stuff, but I did it all, hired everybody, opened the office, built it out, and it got to a point where I felt like some local people were ready to take it over. So I did resign, and then that would lead me into what you mentioned there. I started my own company. In short, what we were doing, we were purchasing Caterpillar parts and components out of South Africa, and then importing them into the U.S., which is a challenge in itself, and then reselling them to the dealers here in the U.S., and then letting them make the real money by selling them to the end users, taking advantage of some exchange rates. So I learned a lot of things about logistics that tied in very well with Bulu.
What are some DR Parts, I believe?
DR Parts is the name of my company.
drparts.com.
drpartssales.com. Yep.
There you go. What are some of the things that, I always think it's interesting when a lot of us had positions or jobs where logistics is a total afterthought, and like Johnny and the gang is going to handle that when I send them the information. And now having to manage that at both DR Parts and a massive part of that at Bulu, what are specifically to DR Parts, what were some of the things that just gave you headaches and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if we can do that? Like, what were the first things? Because I know for anybody, once you get into logistics, get prepared to get your ass whooped.
Over and over again.
Yes. And so what were some of those things?
Yeah, so I mean, originally what I thought was the hard part to do would be to bridge the trust gap of, a dealer, let's say in Indiana, to now trust that he's buying something out of Africa from a person that, because of COVID, he's never met him in person. We spoke on the phone, and they're spending a lot of money. So I thought that would be the hard part. That proved to be the easy part, to actually make the sale and then it's like, oh no, he wants to buy a 40-foot container full, of 25 tons worth of stuff. Now I have to get
Didn't
this
think
there,
about
don't
that
I?
part.
Right. It's a terrible game of Tetris that you have to figure out how to fit these. I mean, these are weighing things that weigh a couple tons each.
Yep.
So I had to learn a lot about maximum weights in shipping containers. Made some very big mistakes very early on, not taking into account the weight of the containers themselves. So they don't tell you about it till you get to customs, and they're like, oh yeah, you got to pay X amount of thousands more now just to get this into the country, overweight permits. So that was it. It proved to be the most difficult part of my business model, was the logistics, and um, the learning experience was mistakes. And
Yep.
unfortunately, when you're running your own business, you learn fast because your back's against the wall, and you know that
Yep.
every dollar that you lose goes to your rent or your food on your plate. So you
Yep.
learn quick, which is great. So I learned very quickly on how to get this done efficiently. I also learned that I charged about 50% less than a normal logistics provider for bringing a 40-foot container from Africa into America. So it was no wonder everyone wanted to do business with me, and still does.
Right.
But so
Right.
if you're looking to move a container from Africa to the US, hit me up. But
Hit up
yeah,
jake.com.
hit up jake.com, hit me
There
up.
you
But
go.
yeah, that was the main thing, just trying to realize we have a massive problem on our hands at 25 tons worth of things that I now have to get into this container that doesn't fit in the container. So we're building shelves and harnessing things, and then
Mhm.
you're dealing with the shipping vessels, which is a beast of its own.
So you have, at this point, you have 6 or 8 years of global experience setting up offices, finding sales folks, finding office managers, etc. You're like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm going to go do it myself, which any great entrepreneur does. You go
Right.
start this thing. I would say, from everything that I've seen and heard, it's like by far more successful than a lot of people starting off. But, you had industry experience, knowledge, the global travel under your belt, etc. And just like any entrepreneur, there's massive headaches when you start to, you're like, it's like this enlightening of like, oh crap, like I was just doing like 25% of it on the sales front, which is the most important to, get business in the door.
Mhm.
But then the afterthought is like the people that actually have to make it happen. Right.
We sold it. Now what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you get a call from me and I'm like, hey, let's team up, join the team. You're like, I got this thing. And I'm like, who cares? You can have that thing. And you're like, are you insane? And I'm like, yes, I am. I believe even at one point I said, I don't know, tell me what your salary should be with us. Like you have more experience than I do. And then you come to Bulu and you come on down to our basement where we're all working away because of COVID. And we are maneuvering into an opportunity where we find that small to medium-sized businesses are experience exponential growth from COVID and other things, just the internet in general. And we are here to offer additional support, not to just, big brands, private label boxes, et cetera, but now to also partner up, team up with these SMBs who, let's call her Callie, is shipping 500 subscription boxes. There's more coming in the door. Let's do some more. Or Callie doesn't know that she's getting taken advantage of by the shipping and logistics industry, which I think a lot of people would be shocked to learn. It's almost like if you have a website, you're overpaying for your servers, right? And I think shipping and logistics is the same way. Like you're getting the product to people, but you're overpaying for this, like arguably most crucial step. You went through the past 3 months of us really fine tuning pricing and onboarding for those things. What were the big takeaways that you had? I think Stephanie and I are way too involved for almost 10 years now in the industry. I don't know if certain things people know or don't know, right? I'm constantly having those conversations and going like, oh, you don't know what this is? I think I know what that is. It might have changed. I don't know. Like that's a lot of my conversations. But what are some of those things that you've learned, the massive insights over the past 3 or 4 months, helping fine tune pricing for shipping logistics for, specifically kits and subscription box? I think people would really value that.
Yeah, the most surprising thing for me was starting to have these conversations with people that they just did not have a clear understanding of what they were spending and what their money was going towards.
Right.
They would see a bill. Let's say they're already with a fulfillment provider and they've been with them for a couple of years. Maybe they don't understand what their invoice says. They don't really understand what they're paying for. They just know that that's an amount that they pay and their
Right.
products get to people, and they just don't question it. And even deeper than that, they see the shipping bill and it's massive, and they don't question, can we get this down? What
Right.
can we do to get this down? And that's what their fulfillment providers sitting there licking their lips, being like, they're
Yeah.
not even asking any questions. Let's
Right.
just keep building at
Right.
this amount. So that was the first thing for me, that when I talk to people, they kind of just try to shun you off and be like, no, we're good. I was like, hey, let me talk to you and let me show you a couple of things. And we like to say apples to apples, and
Mm-hmm.
often it ends up being an apples to oranges comparison, because what I found digging into pricing for various folks, including the shipping providers, they make it purposely really hard to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So something I actually take from Paul is to speak to me like a golden retriever. So
Yep.
I always try to just really dumb it way down and just say, guys, I want to make sure you understand line by line. So we've got some really easy sets of questions that folks will come in and they'll answer and say, hey, look, even if you don't work with us, I would maybe like to help save you some money at your current provider. And
Yep.
when that's kind of my approach at sales in general. I'm not the typical used car pushy person. I'm
Yeah.
saying, hey, I've got value to give you, and I would obviously like you to do it with us. But if nothing else, I can help you in your current situation.
Yeah.
And people really value that a lot. We've ended up in
Yeah.
a lot of situations where we'll give them a quote, we'll compare it, and I say, hey, look, I understand you guys aren't ready to make the move here. Take this to your current provider, save some money. If
Yep.
you know someone else in the industry looking here, send them our way. So
That's
Yeah.
um,
And
that is the key.
that's just a good way to go through life in general. And Paul and
Yeah.
I operate that way a lot too, that, we just try to be generous with a sharing of knowledge and connections,
Right.
especially Paul. He's really good at it.
Yeah.
And Jake, you are too. I've seen that in your time at Bulu. But, you put that out into the world and that karma comes back to you,
Yeah.
mhm.
The interesting thing that I found is that by doing that, and by, I always tell people all the time, I'm like, yeah, just take a call with somebody from Bulu, because worst case scenario, I can dang near promise you're going to walk away with something you didn't know before to go and ask. And as you stated, Jake, like, well, at least now they can go back to their provider or UPS or FedEx and say, hey, I learned something. What is this? And they're like, oh, right. Whoops. Our oversight. We'll change that for you. And then the thing, though, that matters the most is, like, you have to say, like, when that happens, go share that experience with people. And I think so many times in sales, the expectation is like, okay, we're going to hit 1 out of 10, right? Whether that's a call or whether that's a closed contract or whatever it is. But the thing that people don't think about is, like, make those other 9 like quality, great experiences, and you can develop a relationship, but not have to call them every week, right? And, like, you have to ask people to tell other people about you. And that is such a, like, the referral thing. And it's something that I learned the hard way when we had our own subscription box. We're shipping out tons of subscription boxes. And it was like, oh my gosh, we're not asking any of our receivers of the subscription box to tell other people. Like, we better get a point system or something going, or whatever. And I see it time and time again where, sales rep nails like 1 out of 10. The other 9, it's just kind of floats away, and, they just try to never think about it. And it might've been a bad experience or whatever it is. And they just move forward. I'm like, yo, you just burnt that lead, like, hard. Like, go plant that lead as a seed to go help you down the line. And people change jobs, people change positions, and I always say, I think some of our most of our business is people that get a new job or a new position because they're like, remember when we learned all that shipping stuff? Who was that? He was like a cow. He's like a dabbing cow. What was that guy? Jake, that was it.
Twice.
Yeah,
Call that
We're gonna see how
guy
many
up.
right.
times we can get you to
That's
dab
that's
before
three.
this
That's
podcast
three.
is over.
Three a
Call up that
lifetime.
guy because, yeah.
Ding ding,
I had
twice.
I had 2 calls today, which were people that had previous positions. They had conversations with people at Bulu, and they
Yep.
started with a new company, and they reached out right away. And
Yep.
they were like, it's fun for me being relatively new to hear people sing the praises of just how well
Right.
they were treated. Because in some of my past experiences with business cultures I've worked with, if someone wasn't going to sign up with you, well then screw them, then
Right.
so it's fun to be in an environment where I can just be myself and be genuine. And if someone's not gonna can go with me, like, hey, this is gonna sound strange, but that's fine. You know,
Yep.
just here's a little bit of extra knowledge here, and I won't go down the crystal nose path, but I'll always go talk to them about crystal nose personality profiles and say, hey,
Yeah.
there's a little extra value add on. If you know someone else who's interested, refer them over here. So it's
Yeah.
it
We
makes
only
it
want
makes
to
my
do
job a lot of fun.
business with people who want to do business with us.
Right.
And that's the way we approach, I think, conversations in the sales. That's the way we approach like even our contracts and our agreements. There's no like long-term binding thing. We're like, if we're not doing what you need us to do, or if, this isn't working out, we only want to work with people who want to work with us.
Yeah.
So we're not going to hold this piece of paper over your head and say, sorry.
Yeah.
You're
People
stuck.
are
You're here now.
shocked
Yeah.
people are always shocked to hear that. I won't say the specifics of it, but there are, I can neither confirm or deny companies like Walmart, I think legally I can say that, where we have turned companies down. We have ended contracts or relationships with people and paid fees to get out of them. All these things where they were potentially profitable, but because we're playing the long ball, because we know that this whole SMB fulfillment subscription thing, it's going to be a slower start, but 2 years, 3 years goes very quickly. And we have a saying, they always come back, right? Which means like you're always going to talk to them again at some point. And the benefit of playing the long ball, where then you start going to conferences. We were just speaking on a recent podcast to Joe Tarnowski of ECRM. And man, that was an amazing relationship. It still is. Their company acquired something that we built, and it just continues to be this thing that works out for all parties. And that's, I think, something that you understood on a deep level, which explains a lot of your previous success at places. And on the track and closing sales now, woohoo, at Bulu, right?
Yep, get it done.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that you see that some of these small to medium sized businesses completely overlook, right?
I think they overlook the amount of time they're spending focusing on logistics and fulfillment.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
They've started a business for whatever to make these glass jars, and they're
Right.
so passionate about the glass jars, but then all of their time gets caught up in focusing on how to fulfill their own orders. They try to keep it in house for way too long, and the term that comes out over and over and over again, these people are bursting at the seams. And
Yep.
I every time we have this conversation, I think to myself, well, then why don't you do something about it?
Let go of the vine.
Let it go, and that people are just so used to slimy salespeople coming in trying to trick them that when you
Yeah.
have as a sales professional, you have a call with somebody, their guard is so up all the time.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I really enjoy just taking the time to be like, hey, I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to let you know I understand the situation you're in. I'm having conversations like this all the time. I can tell from the tone of your voice that you're stressed out, and I know why it is. It's because you
Right.
want to focus on glass jars and you're focused on how to pack the glass jars into boxes
Yep.
instead.
Yes.
So that's a huge thing for me, for people who haven't already outsourced their fulfillment, is that they allow themselves to get to the point where it almost ruins their whole business because
yeah.
they end up and they can't focus on advertising, marketing, improving
Yep.
their products. And so when we start having that conversation and they realize like, oh wow, this guy is actually just trying to help us.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well, do you want to grow your business? Then this is the next step. Do you want to go to the next level? So that term, bursting at the seams, is something that's, anytime I hear that, I was like, this person that's a way of saying, I'm desperate, help me. I'm
Help
too prideful to
me.
ask you, but help me out, please. So
Yeah.
You're barely holding it together. Yeah.
I know, having been in the position when we first launched we had our own subscription box, and that was like the original thing 9 years ago that we started doing. Fortunately, one of our very first hires was Adam, and he had a background in both finance and logistics, which was just key to everything. We knew it, but we didn't really understand the depth of that, like how important that was. And I know, as an entrepreneur, at the time, I was very into like vitamins, supplements, health. I still am, but I was like really, really, that's like kind of all I thought about ever. And as an entrepreneur, you're so passionate about the product, right? And had it not been for Adam, who ran everything with a team, my life, and arguably at times it was, like, it turned into like customer service and logistics. And so many times it's like painful to see these entrepreneurs that, maybe they have a candle company or a glass jar company or whatever it is. And they're like, they didn't start that thing to be a logistics and customer service professional, right? And you almost got to like kind of shake them and go like, I was there. Cause most entrepreneurs have like this control, like they need to control everything. But also, nothing is sexy about logistics. Like, they don't want to talk about that thing, but they need it more than they need anything. And this give and take of like, if you can kind of just sit them down and say like, hey, you didn't start this company to not work on candles. Let's get you back to that. And when they do start, and some of them have been burned, but when they do start to see like, oh my gosh, I can just answer 4 questions and upload a document. Like, I love to see the intensity roll down. And sometimes I think that really what we're doing, and really why I enjoy what we're doing, is that we are helping entrepreneurs become business people, not just hustle all the time. And that is a massive jump. And I always think, like, Shopify is a really good mission of help people get their first sale, right? I feel like sometimes our mission is like, help people not become a slave to logistics, right?
Yeah,
because that's like right around the corner. In your own business, have you identified the point at which you hand over the shipping logistics, or is it big enough and frustrating enough? I mean, you already know that it takes 4.7 million carrier pigeons to get a caterpillar over.
Right.
Is that the way you're going to keep doing it? Or have you thought about this for yourself and what you're doing as well?
I outsourced my logistics after my first large mistake, so I don't do that anymore.
No shit,
so,
really? Did you really?
Yes, yeah. I found
Nice.
I've learned, and something you guys have strengthened in me is to focus on what I'm good at, and
Yeah.
I'm not that great at logistics. I'm great at formulating good plans around logistics, but there's people who specialize in how do you clear a 40-foot container full of Caterpillar mining machines that may have soil on them? How do you get that through customs? I'm not gonna spend all day doing that, so I outsourced it myself. I looked at myself and I was like, I did not start this to figure out how to import these things covered in dirt through customs. So I outsourced it after about 3 months. So now, obviously, you have to have a conversation with, just like someone has conversations or weekly meetings with our customers. I have similar things with my logistics provider. So it's pretty much like, hey, this sale's been done. This is how much it's going to weigh. You figure it out from there. And they keep me in the loop on when it's loaded in the containers, and I keep the customers in the US in the loop on that. But
and are you like you're like, these pallet storage fees are bullshit? I know, because I do this. I see this all the time. I do this every day, and that's wrong. And
I've definitely got better at keeping my logistics providers in line since starting with Bulu, for sure. I'm going back at them and we're going line by line now. But I wanted to touch on something you said earlier about when I start having these conversations with entrepreneurs about bursting at the seams. It's one of the small benefits of the world we live in right now with so many Zoom meetings, because I get an opportunity where it's not on the phone. I get not really, but look them in the eyes and have that conversation like you're speaking to I don't want to call them a child, but you're look them in the eyes and say, you didn't start your business for this. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm trying to help you.
Yes.
And that helps so much in the sales world right now. The way things are, like cold calls are changing, sales tactics are changing. And if you can have that opportunity where you're like, look, man, I'm being genuine here. I really want to help you out, and this is what I'm literally. My job is to help you. So either let me help me, or you can continue to go through this. I'll give you some resources, but this is my last attempt to help you out.
Yeah.
So that's been funny.
You pinpointed on one of my favorite things as an outcome from the pandemic, which is prior to the pandemic, like we would meet with like Disney or Crayola or whoever, and there'd be Blue Jeans or Zoom or GoToMeeting links. And anytime there was one on there, you'd be like, okay, click it. But does this mean that we're doing audio only, or are they going to see us? Are we supposed to put on the camera or no camera? And you never really knew. And I feel like most of the time it defaulted to audio only. And now it's like you default to video.
Right.
Like cameras on, joining the meeting. And I love it. It's so, I don't know, maybe it's because we're all extroverts right in this room right now, but seeing people is just so much better.
I was like, I don't know if I love it.
You don't love it?
It just depends on it just depends on what the subject matter is. Like, like it's mostly because we've talked about this, liking to be on the go, right? And if there's like something where it's just like a quick, like I just need this shipping company to do this, it's like,
sure,
yeah, but I think introductions and meeting people is much greater for sure. Yeah. I'd say podcasting. I was on a podcast yesterday and I was talking to somebody and they kept bringing something up and I saw some Nebraska gear and I was like, wait, who are you? And how do I know you? And they were like, I know your parents. I live 2 houses down from them. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's like a really awesome podcast by Leadership Harbor. And they're like, yeah, since the pandemic, this is where we do it. And I'm like, I would have never in a million years found that out. So as long as you don't have yappy dogs, that sucks.
Everyone does though. I mean, it's like, and every person acts the same when that happens. They're like, I'm so sorry about my dog. I was like, look, I'm there's my plant. This is as close as I have to a dog here. I've got similar situations. Everyone's got dog barkings right now. So it's the world of Zoom.
Or kids running in.
Kids.
Right.
Were you going to ask something?
Go ahead.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I thought we were going to ask the same question.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no.
Read my mind.
Guys, that's cute. That's cute, guys. Are we thinking the same thing?
It's so cute. Are you thinking we never
whatever you're going to say,
the same sentence as each other? Now I forgot, of course.
Of course.
Now are you just copying
me?
Yeah. Now she's just okay, son.
I'm not very good at it.
Yeah. So, I know what I was going to ask you. What are some of the when you're talking to these SMBs and about the fulfillment logistics, what are some of the common things that you see as far as software? Like, what are they using? I know that everybody's like, oh, we use ShipStation, and you're like, yeah, that's not what we do, right? But I think sometimes entrepreneurs try to say, oh, I have this magical software that solves everything. I don't need that. Like, what are some of those misperceptions that you hear about some softwares that people are using? Or I ship USPS, it's fine, right? Well, it depends what you're trying to accomplish, but I would love for the listeners to hear some of those things, and maybe even Stephanie of all people, because she does the most operations.
What do you mean of all people?
Well,
out
of all
what
of
was that supposed to
all the people
three of us can explain some of the softwares, right? So what are some of the things that I'm just going to plow forward? What are some of the things that you hear that folks are using? Like Excel for shipping, and you're like, ooh, okay, that might work.
Well, the one major pushback people give is, and you said ShipStation already, is ShipStation. We're talking to them like, hey, we can massively decrease your shipping rates for you. Like, no, we use ShipStation, we're fine. And it's just like some sort of common misconception that because they have ShipStation set up, that they can't get improved rates. And I can't tell if it's just an easy out or they've just it's too much to think about is what I've come to grasp. It's too
Right.
complex. They want to think about their glass jars. They don't want to think about the fact that just because they got ShipStation set up, that it can still be improved, and that there's ways to plug in other rates to that. So that's like it's just in the last month or two been like a mind-blowing conversation when someone takes the time to actually listen and they say, no, we use ShipStation. I say, great. This is how we can help you through ShipStation. And
Yeah.
that's really been the main one. And then the WMS. Another thing I found is that people like to act like they know more than they actually do.
Yes.
So they'll just try to throw around like, well, we use this and this and this, and this is. I was like, oh, great. Well, our WMS goes straight into that, and you could tell when you say WMS, they have no idea what a WMS is. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
this has gone over your head right here. But
Yeah.
in terms of softwares that comes up the most, it really goes down to ShipStation for the most part, because so many of the conversations that we have are based around shipping. Because
Yep.
right now in the
Yep.
industry, people just accept what they get and they don't question it when
Right.
it comes to shipping. And I've done a lot of work talking to shipping carrier providers and even consultants that can help get rates lower. And those consultants told me that I'm not going to throw any of the shipping carriers under the bus, but their specific ones, their whole strategy is to just make it too confusing for you to look deeper into.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Right.
And on that note, like, I don't think a lot of folks realize, like, there's a UPS Ground, there's a UPS Innovation, there's FedEx, there's all of these subcategories within the major carriers that, you might be talking to one department in FedEx, but really you just don't understand that there's somebody for, lightweight subscription boxes. It's a totally different department, different rep, different everything. And I think people are shocked because, they really like and trust their person. Well, that's great. They are the best at their piece of FedEx, but they didn't even think about, nor did you actually fit in a different category of FedEx or UPS better. And I think that's one of the things that over the past couple months, you, myself, probably a lot of people at our company have come to understand with our partners, like, it would help us to break that down for them. Right.
Yeah.
And so can you link in like some of the things that we do? And I don't know if one of you wants to explain what ShipStation does. I would do a terrible job of it. I could, but it would be really long.
I mean, ShipStation essentially creates the labels for you, right? Where are you shipping it? What's the weight, dimensional or actual? And then it prints the label for you. What it's not going to do is find you the best rates, right? You got to go negotiate those on your own with the different carriers. And if you don't have much shipping volume, if you're not shipping a high quantity of packages, you're not going to have much negotiating power, right? That's one of the big benefits to working with Bulu, right? We ship a lot of subscription boxes, and we're starting to ship a lot of individual daily orders, right? Which is why we brought Jake on. So we have been able to secure a lot really good rates. And so especially, since you mentioned like subscription box companies who have been fulfilling themselves, they might have, one or two people dedicated to hitting and fulfilling their orders, whether it's monthly and then daily orders. And that probably is working. There's an opportunity cost, like you said, like you're not able to focus as much on marketing or whatever it is. But for us, right, if you outsource that to a 3PL like Bulu, of course there's going to be a markup, right? Per unit, you're going to pay more for the labor to pack those than you would if you just hired somebody yourself. But the big thing that you have to remember is what Jake keeps stating is that the shipping costs, where that comes in is like sometimes you actually net out about the same depending on where you're at, because what you're unable to do on your own unless you partner with somebody who's got large shipping volume is you're just not able to get those rates. And we are, right? So that's where you've really got to be able to kind of conduct your own analysis to know when it is the right time to shift that over. Because really, Bulu doesn't want to partner with somebody who isn't ready, right? Financially, if partnering with us puts too much of a strain on you, right? We want your business to succeed. The only way our business succeeds is if the partners that are, choosing us also succeed. And so choosing to shift to us too early and that puts a financial strain on you, that's no good, right? We want you to come at the right time. We want our pricing to make sense for you. Bulu's our passion is the 5-way win, which sounds cheesy, but it really is like we want everybody to come out feeling like they got their share of the prize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just really quickly to go back to what Paul was saying also, like when it comes down to the shipping rates, people think just because it's FedEx Ground, for example, and FedEx Ground, that people get different rates for the same service. So they're thinking like, no, we already ship that with that carrier on that, FedEx Ground, for example.
Yep.
Sorry, FedEx, but say, well, you ship that way, yes, but so we do the same service, but we get a lower rate, and
Yep.
I don't understand why people can't grasp that part of it.
Yeah.
They say, no, well, we already use them. I was like, yes, but we ship millions of
Yeah.
packages. And you ship a couple
Yeah.
thousand. Obviously, we're getting better rates than you.
My rep is lying to me.
Right.
They're not lying. It just takes a lot of work to, get the best rates. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Like, you have the time to negotiate and to maintain that with them. And that's part of what we do. So.
And off what Stephanie said, let's say a company is fulfilling their own orders. They've got 2 or 3 people that do that, but those 2 or 3 people don't only do that. So I've spoke with multiple companies recently who those 2 or 3 people also produce all of the product, whatever it is.
Right.
So every second, so they have a Black Friday sale. They have a huge influx of orders. So they go and they fulfill all their orders, and all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we're out of products now. So then
Right.
they obviously they can't fulfill more, so then they go back to produce more, and it's just a never-ending cycle for them. So some of it's just drilling down into their processes that they go through and be like, hey, it always comes back to the same thing. I'm not trying to trick you. Like this is
Yeah.
what this is for your own good here. And then it's like, think if John, Sally, and June could rather just produce all the time. You would never have to have that sold out sticker other than just for marketing purposes on your website. If you want someone to think it's sold out because you're selling a bunch, but if you're actually running out of product, then you need to focus on your production.
Yeah.
And if those production people are focused on fulfillment, you're never going to get over that line. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing for when it comes to shipping for our subscription box partners is how important it is to think through the actual size of your box, right? Because 1 month, the contents you've got secured for that box might not need one that big, right? And so then what Bulu has a lot of experience doing is a cost analysis between that bigger box and the cost to ship that bigger box versus going to a smaller box that's going to be more affordable when it comes to shipping, but you've got the cost of the tooling and the cost of getting a different die cut for that box, right? But if you do that cost analysis, it might make sense to be like, I'm going to invest a few $1,000s in the tooling for this smaller box, but now I've got 2 options because I know anytime I do this box, I'm saving so much money.
Yeah. It's the sales principles that we're talking about, I think, are universal. And even when we were securing, millions of samples for Bulu Box or on behalf of our partners, it was like the same thing, right? Like I'm just trying to help you get your product into hands. Like, talk to me about your samples or whatever, right? And I do think that different markets and products, there's like a different sales style, but to me, anytime you're entering into a relationship, be it we're going to build out your subscription box, and if you're the company, I need to find vendors that provide great products to put in my subscription box. I need to find, cardboard or whatever it is. Like, the basis of that, you should enter with like, I'm looking for somebody to get married to long-term, right? It isn't like how cheap can I get this thing? Cause you're screwed. But it's I'm looking for the right fit that as I get old and hairy and gross, they're going to be okay with that and pull the hairs off of my back. As my subscription box grows and I have more customer service problems and I go global, I am looking for somebody that is willing to get that box overseas at the same, whatever. So it really is like, that was one of the things, my gosh, 4 months ago, whenever we're going through the interview process, I keyed up on like immediately. I was like, oh, he understands, and his background is building the relationship. It's not making the sale. And I encourage a lot of our listeners who have subscription boxes, like think about it like that. Don't think about, can I get this product for my box cheap? Think, what does that person need? So they can sample with me, or I can buy product from them long term. Then what happens is those people come back and say, what do you want? What product do you want us to build for your box?
Right.
You know, and,
Sure.
and that's been something really enlightening. Jake, what are some of the tools that are, let's talk about sales tools. And for this context for listeners, you know, maybe you're not making the sales to consumers, but you are securing, you know, product samples, et cetera. These tools will work for that. What are some of the sales tools that you're using now that you maybe didn't use before or never knew existed that you found the most beneficial?
It's so hard for me not to bring up Crystal Knows every time something like this goes on.
Well, let's share with people about this, because I think this helps with hiring and recruiting.
In front of me right now, I have a playbook for myself, Stephanie, and Paul working together. So it breaks down our personalities and says how we can best have a meeting, which, by the way, the three of us can have super effective meetings according to this. So, yep. So that's a big one. It goes through LinkedIn and it breaks down a person's personality, and it helps me a lot in building genuine connections with people to relate the message in a way that is easy for them to receive. And going back to what you said just previously, me being an entrepreneur, just like you guys, it really helps me when I speak to people, because I care about their business. I want to see them succeed. So when I come through armed with, Crystal Knows knowledge of how to make them feel more comfortable, and I also say, look, I also have a business, and I've been where you are, and I want to help you grow. And once you kind of break down that wall through some strategies that Crystal helps and the genuine approach, you can get a long ways. But I just want to share really quick what Crystal says about the three of our brainstorming styles.
You can say some of mine too.
Yeah, so it just gives a quick one for all three of us. So Stephanie is likely to come up with ideas that anticipate others' needs. So what it says for me, I thought it would say for Paul, actually, likely to draw webs or graphics to visually represent thoughts. And then Paul is likely to consider the practical, foolproof suggestions. Yep. So it's just really cool. If you don't use it, look into it for sure. But another thing that's been super helpful for me is the fireflies.ai. Because again, in the spirit of being on Zoom and paying full attention to somebody, with how much the nitty gritty details and numbers are being shared, and the way my mind doesn't digest numbers as well as some people, I guess. So if someone's sharing a bunch of detailed numbers, I really have to take notes, and I have to write it down. So the Fireflies.ai joins your Zoom meeting. It takes down all of the notes. So if I talk to someone about their subscription box and they're sharing the dimensions of the box, the weights of their items, they're forecasting how many items in 6 months from now, I don't have to worry about taking my attention off of them and making them feel like I'm just not part of the conversation as much anymore. Right. So in the world that we're in with digital sales, we'll call it, and how many Zoom meetings you have, it's an invaluable tool for me right now. I use it in every meeting. I think it annoys everyone at our company because I basically have a little friend that joins all the meetings with me.
I don't care.
Right. It's super, super valuable. So those two are my favorite, but I mean, I don't want to plug close too much either. I feel like people are going to have to start paying if we're going to plug them for this many software plugs.
Yeah. We've talked about on previous episodes where like we know some of these sound like shameless plugs, but like for us, a lot of these are tools that we've used for years, and we wouldn't
benefiting by plugging any of
and
these.
We're only suggesting them because we feel as though they will save people headaches and probably time, right? And so for those that don't know, Crystal Knows, it's crystal like a crystal ball, and then knows, KNOWS, like nose. It's a website, go to personality profiler. There's a nice LinkedIn extension, and you can just click on LinkedIn, and you usually, it's pretty accurate. You get a feel for that person, and then you can do a drop down, and it's like, here's how to sell to them, here's how to negotiate, here's how to hire them. And then there's more resources on if you're building out a team, it makes suggestions on what you're looking for. The Fireflies.ai is just voice to text, really. I mean, it does other things, but those are great suggestions. And Close.com. I think Close.com would be fantastic for people who are trying to secure product. It's a sales CRM, but it is hyper-focused on how do we find them and how do we get a yes or a no quickly. It is not the Salesforce. You want to blow your brains out because you don't know what that button does. It is not a HubSpot, which is built for marketing. It is built for finding people, getting it to a yes or a no quickly. And those tools are all super, super valuable. What else are some of the things going from a more traditional company to, somebody that's leveraging technology out there? What are some of the big differences that you've noticed?
Well, in terms of big company versus Bulu right now, it's just being genuine. People really enjoy like the company culture you guys have set up here at Bulu. It makes people really willing to have conversations, and the fact that we're not so pushy on things. Be like, hey, look, we want to partner with you because we think we can help you. If you don't want that, honestly, that's totally fine. Here's a couple different, just like the crystal nose thing, the fireflies. I'll say, look, I'm going to give you some value in every conversation we have, whether or not you work with me or not.
Right.
I obviously am calling you because I think that you should, but if you don't want to, I'm not going to beg you for it. Now, so it's not exactly what you asked me, but for me, the best thing that we're adding in every conversation is some sort of value, whether it's sharing pieces of our tech stack to people that I know that they add, because I have meetings later where their Fireflies joins the meeting. Right. And
you're like,
and
Jake,
really,
have you tried this Fireflies thing? You're like, I told you about that, damn it.
Right. It's that sort of stuff. And it really is just people end up, I say, hey, look, I am going to put time on your calendar next week to follow up on this, but you can totally cancel it. We don't have to have the meeting if you don't want to. When you approach it in that way, people are they just want to do business with you more. Be like, you know what, these guys, and maybe that's a Nebraska thing. I'm not sure. I've been outside of Nebraska for so long. I think it is, right. I forgot how friendly people in Nebraska are. And I'm having a lot of conversations with subscription boxes on either of the coasts. And, again, right when you call up, like, hey, I'm calling from Nebraska. Like, this guy is calling from his horse. He just got out of the tractor.
Meanwhile, you have 15 pages of history on this guy. You know what his personality is. You know where he's at, physically right now. And they're like, some guy in Nebraska. Like, I know. I can see you right now.
Right.
Nebraska's the best.
It is. Go Big Red. Is that what we're supposed to say in Nebraska, right? The crystal nose thing also adds to that in a personal way, because when I talk to somebody, I'm never anyone but totally myself, and I think that comes off as like people just, they're like, this guy's not trying to be something he's not,
Right.
And I think that they really appreciate that. Right. You can tell when someone's being fake. I can tell when someone's got a front up too. And for me, just like it's weird, I like to be under pressure. I like when I know someone's putting on a front, because I'm like, I'm going to get down to who you really are here, because the secret is I already know, because Crystal told me. So it's just, I've really enjoyed being able to never have to change my character in any. And this is props to you guys that. Yes, guys, I'm giving props to my bosses on the podcast, but it's props to you guys for building a culture where everyone feels like they can be themselves all the time, and I think it pays big dividends in every sales call that I have. So it's exciting time.
Well, we appreciate that, and to me, I've done classified sales ads, I've done all different sorts of industries, and you name it, and I think probably subconsciously with Stephanie and I, the same way that one of our core values is fire the assholes. It's do something where you don't have to stretch, or you don't have to almost feel like you're conning people. And what's interesting is if you look at Bulu Box, that attitude was, we're just going to give you the samples. Yeah, we're going to give you intense, crazy stuff. We're gonna give you arguably what's the word I'm looking for? Not good or bad. The samples are gonna be polarizing, right? But we're just giving you the box, and you get to make that decision. And we're giving you the information. We're just gonna put it in front of you, right? And then you go to Bulu Marketplace, and it was like, hey, we're just gonna connect. We're just going to put your product in front of retail buyers. You get to decide what you want to do with it. And now what we're doing with, fulfillment and logistics and subscription boxes, what's crazy to me, and I know is going to work well, down the road, is our industry, or the industry, the part of our company that focuses on shipping and fulfillment. Our unique selling benefit is like being honest and being transparent. Everybody else out there is just saying cheap, 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 right? Well, what can you do when you say we can offer competitive rates, but more importantly, we're going to show you and tell you and educate you, and I'm going to be me and you're going to be you. And even when we were doing private label subscription boxes more, that's super refreshing to like the CMO of Disney. Like, oh shit, this Nebraska dude just walked into my office and he's not fronting. He's just being that person. And oh shit, Jake's talking to me about fulfillment and shipping. He's not saying anything but the truth. That's refreshing for shipping and fulfillment. Because if you do any sort of e-commerce, every day you're getting 100, actually I'm probably getting 6 to 8 emails a day of somebody that's like, I can do cheaper fulfillment. And they're not questioning anything. They're just saying, I'm telling you now. And we're saying, we think we can do that. Let's have a call and let's figure out if this is true. Take our information, plug it into your ship station, and let's get the answer. And, the thing that people come to learn is, if you're scaling up, I wanted to touch on this earlier, but the question that I think a lot of SMBs, and I think this has a lot of value for our listeners, is that, the question is, when do you know that you're scaling? And somebody used to ask me that all the time when we first started, and, I'd be like, oh, we are, and whatever. And I believe I know the answer to that now. The answer is, when you're not convincing yourself that you're scaling, and when in your mind now, you're not asking, am I scaling? But rather in your mind, you're saying, we are bursting at the seams. I need help. I need this. So the questions of, are we growing, or are we getting sales, or whatever it is, that space is taken over by, how am I going to get a warehouse? How am I going to get boxes? Now, let me help you out. You're scaling, right? And the things that will come out, the decisions that you have to make in that scale process are going to really last long-term for you. And some of the things that we didn't even touch on were, sure, you can do it yourself. It feels cheaper. Sure, you can do shipping yourself. It might seem cheaper. But when you have 250 people in your warehouse packing boxes, and HR comes up and insurance comes up, because that will happen. Are you ready for that? Is it still going to be cheaper? And that's like one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs, we didn't until we got to that point where you have all these employees now. Are you prepared to manage that? And frankly, that's a lot of the conversations that I have. People that are shipping right around 10,000 a month or over 100,000 a year, they're just starting to get a taste of HR issues, and well, did you look at the film, or not film, sorry, the camera, the footage of the person slipping in your warehouse and getting workers' comp? And they're like, we don't have cameras in our warehouse. And you're like, yep, I remember when we didn't either, like 8 years ago. And those are, you find that some of the larger brands, they will hand us work because they're like, we don't want to deal with finding labor. That's super hard. We don't want to deal with all of that stuff. So I think, as you go down the road, there's so many considerations to make. And it's cool to have somebody that's watching and learning, all of those, despite having the background that you have, because we are at the stage that we are, and because we're so communicative, it's cool to see somebody like find those things and experience that with your own company, right? Like go through that.
It's just real quick. It's one unique thing to add on to what I said before about these conversations and add-ons is when I'm talking to subscription box programs, I say, hey, look, by default, our account managers and myself and everyone involved in our country is going to constantly give you advice on how to improve your subscription box program. Right. I was like, you're getting like a free external employee here, and people really, really appreciate that a lot, because say, look, by the nature of how Bulu started, we just know that so well that when someone comes in and they get an account manager, our account manager constantly being like, I don't know why you're doing it that way. Maybe we should consider it this way.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the biggest value add on that we can give in those conversations is like, we've been there, done that. Go out to the market and try to find another fulfillment provider that has that background. You just can't. So
we'll have somebody say like, hey, they'll like email me off the side, like Marcus said we should do blah, 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 blah. But we're doing this like, Marcus is somewhat young and I'm like, they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think you should do what Marcus said because he's been here forever. And he was packing Bulu boxes at one point and he helped like launch Disney, a box for them. So I think he's probably right. But, and people are like, wait, like these are the same people that launch boxes for like Disney or GNC or, those same people working on these multi-billion-dollar brands are helping me on this thing right now. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's all the same mechanisms. And they're like, yeah, well, maybe I should like listen to that thing. I'm like, I don't know. Who knows? Let's give it a try. So, Jake, before we go, what besides Crystal knows, what is a book or a software that we have not discussed that you want to recommend to folks that are running a subscription box or a CPG company that has been of most value to you?
I think that the whole EOS series of books, Traction, that has been huge for me to help you think about how to grow your business and expand it. And you talk about scaling. There's just so many, some principles that I got from that Good to Great by Jim Collins. They're featured throughout that. So for me, that book, it really changed my mindset quite a bit when I came in. I really wish I would have read it when I started my own company. It's the classic wish I knew then what I know now.
Mm-hmm.
I would really recommend digging into Traction, and if your company's struggling, the whole EOS. So
that's great.
And we have a whole episode on EOS. So to get an intro into it, you can listen to our talk with John Fullwider.
It's eosworldwide.com, and then also there's a tractiontools.com, which is EOS but in digital form.
And EOS just released a new software.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Cool.
Or you can email Stephanie and say, give me your Asana templates for EOS. I don't want to write them myself.
I know previously I said that Bulu is really generous with our knowledge share, but I hold those Asana templates really
and Stephanie will go, did you talk to Jake first?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we could have you on the podcast again. I'm like, maybe we have more sales reps from other companies because it hit me during the call that you're talking to dozens of people per week in our arena. And I'm like, sales reps probably have a better pulse on, kitting, subscription, et cetera,
of course.
than anybody else. And nobody interviews sales reps. You know what I'm saying? Like think about the last time.
Because they're normally slimy, right?
Well, that's the perception.
Not me, right?
Yeah. Well, I got bad news for everybody. We are all in sales.
That's right. If you're not.
And if you do not understand that, you better go figure it out.
That's right.
So, Jake, thank you so much for being on the call. We appreciate you. Stephanie, thanks for joining us. Do you have anything, final things for Jake?
No. See you Monday, Jake.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure. I will see you guys on Monday.
Before you go, if somebody wants to talk to you, whether it's about your company or about you or about Traction Tools or Crystal Knows, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Go to hitupjake.com and jump on my calendar. Grab some time. I'm a fan of convenience, so you pick out whatever works for you. I'll make it work for you. Otherwise, it's just jake@bulugroup.com. Just be warned, I really like to talk. So if you want to talk to me, I'll talk to you a lot. So
that's hitupjake.com or jake@bulugroup.com. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. Have a fantastic weekend.
See you guys. Thank you.
Right. Bye, Jake.
Later, man. So Stephanie, that was one of our newest employees, Jake Daberkow.
Mm-hmm.
aka the Daberkow. I'm going to make that a thing.
It's a thing. It's official.
It's interesting because I think it might appear a little strange to like interview your own people, let alone your own sales reps at your company. And I know if I was like cruising podcasts and stuff, I'd be like, what is this? Right. But I also think nobody does that. Right. Furthermore, I don't think you're going to get much more transparency from a company like ours on like, hey, here's our head of sales. Here's what he's seeing, right? Like we're very like open with that stuff. You say generous and I say, well, that just forces us to be better. Like that's part of the reason I want to knowledge share is because it's going to force you to be better. But what were, some of the takeaways or what are your thoughts around that on like, why we're interviewing who we want, these sorts of people, et cetera, which we were talking about before on the way here.
Well, when we started this entire podcast, we thought, when you go out and look for somebody to help you with a subscription box, and this is the truth, right? This isn't like me. I mean,
Stephanie was going to be a nun at one point in her life, so this has value
to it. It's hard for me to say anything if I don't truly believe it and really have conviction in it. But like truly, there is nobody more experienced when it comes to subscription boxes,
right?
As Bulu and our team,
right?
We've just worked on so many subscription box
and so
programs
much volume
that we really felt like, okay, of course, to help our business, but also to share our knowledge with everyone else. Start a podcast, and from time to time, we interview other experts outside of our company, but from time to time we just look internally because
you can't find anybody with more knowledge on it.
In a lot of areas our team really is the leader. So that's why, one of the reasons we've had a few people on, including Jake today. It feels good. Feels good to share that with everybody.
It's cool to get somebody that's so new to it, that's his previous experience, tons of success, and now he's having to learn something new, and it's almost like he's validating some of what our perceptions or what our learnings have been. And man, some of the conversations and emails that I see with him and other like subscription box people, I'm like, yo, you're just like a therapist to the, but I also like, I remember when I was there, and you're just like, it's relentless. Like people don't understand subscription is relentless and it will eat you alive if you don't put things in place. And now if you're doing a full subscription box, you're doing like a magazine and an e-commerce site. You are, monthly, quarterly, whatever.
A product every month. Yeah.
You have this beast pursuing you. And so many times it feels like you're alone, right? But there are things out there. You just have to go find them and use them and trust them, right? Do you still feel like the relentless beast is pursuing you of subscription?
Yes.
You do?
But I feel much more comfortable. I've learned how to tame the beast, right?
Yeah.
We've got processes and everything in place that we know how to handle the relentless nature of subscriptions.
I feel like I feel like what we've learned that at certain points with a subscription, if you do not do certain things, you are going to pay for it dearly.
Yeah.
And one of those things is your shipping rates. And if you do not get that correctly, it's going to hold you back. It's going to, hinder you. And it's like this thing that's beating you up and you don't even know it, right? Yeah. WMS or IMS, like tracking your inventory, not just in an Excel sheet. Those are certain things, ShipStation's great, but like now how do I plug in different rates and get better things? So that's fun to just share that knowledge because our gamble, 5 years ago, about midway through our company was like, nobody else believed that subscription boxes or subscriptions were actually going to be a thing, like kidding it.
Yep.
And we said, this was before they were sample boxes, remember this?
Right. Yep.
And it was like, we could not figure out a way how they aren't a thing.
Yep.
And when everybody ran away and everybody was like doing something else, we're like, let's double down in this industry. And that's the roll of the dice. That's the hypothesis. And now we're sitting with all of this knowledge and we're like, shit, we got to go tell people about this. Right. So for our couple hundred listeners, We appreciate you, and we hope you help spread this knowledge. But there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of things that you can do to ease the burden and ease the pain. Hit us up. We might be one of them. If not, I know that we can direct you to places that will help you out. And I mean that in the most sincerity. I know that this is relentless and it can be hard, but there are people out there like us to help point in the right direction. So take us up on it. So that's all. That's it.
Let's wrap it up.
This has been another episode of Box Talks with Bulu. I am Paul Victor Jarrett.
I'm Stephanie Jarrett.
Stephanie Lee Turman Jarrett.
That's right.
And we're out. Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's do the intro real quick. Welcome to another episode of Box Talks with Bulu. I'm Paul.
And I'm Stephanie.
Stephanie, today we're talking to Jake. He's one of the newest employees at Bulu. What is Jake's best, asset?
He genuinely enjoys helping other business people and contributing to their success.
That is spot on. What's the worst thing about Jake?
Well, he just bought a pair of Crocs, which has been a big debate in our office.
Oh my!
His style.
He's lucky that we're jealous.
He's lucky that we're just in Zoom calls, right? Because it's only like from the chest up, so nobody knows that he's got Crocs on underneath because his credibility would go right out the window. But no, he doesn't. I mean, Jake's great. So Jake is our VP of Sales, VP of Partner Development, something. Titles don't mean a whole lot of
right. Jake's helping other SMBs figure out better, faster, cheaper ways to do fulfillment and subscription.
Yeah, well, because really Bulu has been focused on subscription boxes for so long and primarily partnering with large, like Fortune 500 companies. Recently, many companies have been coming to us in particular to help with their fulfillment. Right? Like helping kit their boxes and get them out the door. And not just large companies, but a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. And we've been focusing on expanding into that realm more over the last, year or so. So to kind of help meet that demand and to expand that, we brought in Jake. And he's been here since the beginning of 2021.
Yep. And the reason we have him on is because he's just got great insight, being fresh, looking at the industry, having a ton of great experience. So let's get into it. There are a lot of fantastic insights. And even at the end, I think I get a little bit very serious. So, stay tuned for that and listen for that. And take notes on some of the softwares. We're giving away some tips on softwares that's taken us years to figure out what work for certain things. So, also, ShipStation probably doesn't do what you think it does. We love ShipStation, but we can make your ShipStation better. How about that for a plug?
There you go. Find out what that means.
All right, let's talk to Jake. That is a wrap.
Thanks, everybody. Live listeners.
We out.